or someone would ask me the other day, she's like, what are you going to do when you actually find someone really similar to you? Would you get along? I was like, gosh, no way.
Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. So today we're joined by Christian Mercer, who is the founder of this interesting app called Positive Plus One, and it's essentially a global social community designed for those living with HIV. We thought it was pretty cool, so we invited Christian on here to tell us a bit more about it and just tell us a bit more about your journey.
Thanks for having me.
So, Christian, in terms of the things you have a hand in at the moment, we know you've helped develop this app, and you work in the hairdressing game too. Give us a little bit of a spiel about yourself.
Okay, so I came from a corporate sales and marketing background. After being in that for about 6-7 years, I got sick of it and decided to become a hairdresser, a barber. Which actually helped a lot because it gave me a lot of freedom and I could have managed my own time. During that time is when I started to pursue the idea of creating Positive Plus One. And during my journey of creating Positive Plus One, I've since opened a couple of salons, one burnt to the ground. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, full of hairdressing, job changes, fires, and apps. That's a heck of a mix.
And what made you jump from sales to hairdressing?
So strangely enough, I used to play rugby in Australia. And when I lived over there, we were poor, we were super skinned. And I used to shave my own head. And some of the guys on the rugby team were like, "Oh, can you do mine too?" I'm like, "Yeah, sweet." Anyway, after a while, I thought, I've got a knack for this. Like, I could do this. I came back to the UK, sort of followed in some family's footsteps and got into recruitment. And then I went on to, different roles and sort of moved around the UK. And after a while, I just got sick. I just got sick of the corporate structure, how people are treated. You're a number, you're not a person. So I got made redundant 1 week before Christmas without any pay, and I was just like, I'm done with this industry. And I just thought, I went for a haircut, and the guy said to me, he said, "Next time you come for a haircut, I'm going to be opening up my own salon. This is where I'll be." Anyway, so I said to him, I said, "Well, if I pay for my own course, will you guarantee me a job?" And he said, "Well, why don't you be my apprentice?" And that's just how that happened, literally just like that. And then, yeah, from there, God, that's kind of where I had the freedom, then the time to be able to work on Positive Plus One and just explore the idea, really.
Man, that sounds like the ultimate scenario. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get the answer.
Exactly.
I tell you what, it would have taken some balls to be sitting there getting a haircut to then be able to change your career.
My family, everybody, friends, everyone were like, "The fuck are you doing?" I was doing pretty well in my sort of corporate career. I had a lot of things going for me, but I was done. And I knew that was the time. And I thought, well, why not? Why not?
Exactly. So I think we all sort of come to that, face that decision in our lives. And some people just take the jump and some people just recede back and just continue.
I think one of the things that I've learned, actually, which is quite important, I think, is most people are quite risk avert. I was like, just risk. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like fun. Boom, go for it. And I think now I've since become a little bit more, a little bit wiser and a little bit more risk avert, but still quite, willing to take a bit of a risk.
So let's say you're back in that barber's chair. You're at that split moment where you take A or B. What if you hadn't have taken that choice and you had have stayed down the corporate world? What would you say would be the big difference for you between those two lives?
I didn't realize how unhappy I was in working, for the man. I quite a decent level of success, especially for a young guy. I was around 24, 25 when I made that jump. And I worked in corporate, and, you know, you work your way up the ladder. And I didn't realize up until the time of like making that leap, and going down my own path, and sort of, you know, it has been tough, don't get me wrong. But it was probably the best thing that I ever did. So in terms of taking that leap, it was super daunting at the time, especially when you've got so many people saying to you, like, what are you doing? You know, you had so many good things happening for you. But yeah, I just had to lead with what I felt was right. Even though I didn't know what the end goal was at the time, you know, I just felt like I know what's wrong, so I'm going to work from that, and then everything else is a bonus, right?
Yeah.
Seeing your
It's
dad.
like you take that leap of faith towards, you know, giving yourself more time and more freedom. And hey, look at where you are now.
And so like
if,
positive plus one.
So give me a chance, Leroy. Come on. let's say we could go back. Same thing to that same chair you were sitting when you made the decision. Have there been any times when you've wanted to go back and decide to not go down the hairdressing and the grooming path?
I went from probably around 60 grand a year, 80 grand a year in pounds, which was a decent wage for a 24-year-old guy. And then I went to be an apprentice barber at 120 pounds a week, which is nothing. I had to sell my car. I had to move up my apartment. I had to literally, like, I was selling like my ironing board, like everything that I owned, just so I could survive. God, yeah, just you know, there's things there that I've just completely forgotten about how mad that time was. Give me your question again. I just don't want to get off track.
So have there been any times in which you've regretted going down your own path?
Yeah, so I about 6 months, maybe 8 months into being a barber, I was struggling financially. I was struggling. You know, and you used to live in a certain lifestyle, and I actually on behind sort of, you know, closed doors on the sly, I actually went for a couple of interviews for some decent paying jobs. And it wasn't until I got to those interviews and I'd sat down, I'd realized how much I'd grown as an individual, I suppose, not even knowing it, but probably as an entrepreneur. And I felt like what I've got to give is actually too good for just that singular thing. And even though I was desperate for the money, I stuck by my barbering because of the lifestyle and the freedom that I had to be able to go on and create other things. So yeah, there were definitely times when I was like, shit, you know, or like I've made the wrong decision. But, you know, I think when I started to explore it, that's when it sort of, it was just this gut feeling, you know, second brain. Gut feeling.
It's almost like it gave you that freedom to be able to, you know, realize the value that you have yourself to be able to take to the rest of the world.
I think that's it. I think finding the value of yourself. You in a corporate world, you're very constricted by what you can and can't do. And when you step out of that and you start to explore your own things, you think actually the boundaries are way beyond what I've been told they are. So yeah,
a lot of freedom. And so, do you start working on positive plus one pretty early on in that?
So this is probably 2015, April 2015 is when I started my barbering. Around March time, so there'd been sort of a small transition between the short transition between sort of the period of where I'd been like made redundant, and I was freelancing as a consultant, and I wasn't enjoying that. And then Positive Plus One had sort of presented itself to me. A guy that I used to manage when I lived in London, who'd become a friend. He started taking a lot of time off work. And rather than sort of going up the food chain, you know, and getting to the point where he's going to start facing disciplinaries, I reached out to him and I just said, look, you know, like, what's going on? You know, you're taking a lot of time from work. You're not being yourself, blah, blah, blah. And that's when he disclosed to me that he'd found out that he was living with HIV. He was a young guy. And it's sort of, I was a young guy as well. So it was like, wow, like, you know, that genuinely could happen to anybody. And I said, you know, well, like, how do you do with anybody who's in need? How can I help you out? And he just said, look, you know, I'm on medication. I'm receiving support from a local charity, which is great. But it was like the most daunting thing to him at the time was like, how do I tell anybody, or how do I meet somebody? You know, I'm young. I've still got so much ahead of me. You know, HIV is no longer a death sentence. You know, there's, thanks to sort of pharmaceutical advancements, people can live full, long, healthy lives. And they can reach a state which is called undetectable, which means that they can't even pass the virus on, not even through unprotected sex, not through, you know, it's amazing what's been done. So I went to go find something that was available to him, you know, to anybody, to see if I could help him out, you know, potentially meeting people, or just meet people that have just share a similar kind of story, right? And there was just nothing there. There's nothing there. So this is all happening whilst I'm making the jump to become a barber. And yeah, I mean, I was a single heterosexual guy, you know, suddenly sort of like delving into the world of HIV, which the common misconception is it's just the gay community. It's not. But, you know, you can imagine what like sort of my friends and family were thinking at the time. Like, hang on, am I having like a quarter life crisis? Like, you know, what's going on? Like, he's just quit his job. He's going to be a barber. Oh, and now he's working in the HIV industry. It's like, what? Eh? So, yeah, it was a crazy, I suppose, a crazy time. And I got to the point where I just stopped explaining myself to people. I was just like, it's not even worth it. I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah, you can imagine like the people who live with HIV, like they can't have to experience that daily, just explaining to people, like on a date or even just friends, just saying that, like, I guess, yeah, as you said, the stigma has changed, but like, it's still kind of like, whoa, like, you know, and people gossip and
it's massively prevalent. Even still, I mean, I won't name names, but we've done a lot of sort of like the Pride events in the UK and stuff like that. And we'd carry around the banners, you know, and it'd be like, you know, HIV positive +1, HIV positive dating, HIV positive social. And there'd be people coming out of the crowd and saying to me, like, thanks for this, like, I'm living with HIV. And not in like an awful way, but there were times when like some of my friends would maybe take a bit of a step back. And that's just that stigma, like it's that common misconception of like, you know, of this virus. It's ridiculous. You know,
I'll put my hand up and be the first to admit that I don't have much awareness about it. It's not much of a world that I've really had a hand in, you know, to deal with. And I don't have enough information to be able to navigate it to a very good standard that I think would be able to, you know, be supportive of somebody else.
I think because in some respect, it's great that it's me that's doing this, you know, as like, you know, a single heterosexual guy who most people wouldn't define as being, you know, someone who lives with HIV. Like within this community, you know, it's taken me a lot of time to earn the respect because I'm not living with HIV. I'm not from the LGBTQ community, you know, I'm just here just because I'm doing it because I know it's the right thing to do. But also from an education point of view, like for other heterosexual people, you know, people just like me who would sort of fit my sort of criteria, right? It's important for me to educate people like me, right? Which I think which is the main thing that where sort of me and my PR team are doing my executive profiling on about, like, you know, I'm just the general Joe Blogs of the public. And I've learned about HIV and I know that it's, you know, it's once it's under control, like it's fine, it's sweet, it's no different. So,
and you know, once you're on the app, like what would you see? Is it just like forums or?
So we've taken elements of the social side of things like Facebook, and then, you know, and brought that together with the world of like Hinge. Not so much Tinder, because I feel like Tinder's taken a turn for a little bit more of the seedy side of things, to be honest. I mean, you know, but you know, it's Hinge is built around sort of like creating meaningful connections. and obviously adding in that social side. We started out as a dating app, and I thought that's just what the community needed. And then through feedback from our service, from our members, it turns out that there's so much more. There's a social aspect to it. People are there for connection, not just romantics, but actual connection, to meet like-minded people who share a similar background, a similar story to what they've gone through. There's something there so substantial that they're crying out for. And yeah, the app caters for all of those things.
So you're managing all this stuff at the moment too, the app.
Mm-hmm.
You're also opening, new salons.
Yeah.
There's a very busy lifestyle in there.
I will be, I'll be honest with you, the last 4 weeks, we all know about burnout, right? The last 4 weeks of my life have been crazy. The timelines that I thought were going to be staggered ended up coming literally all at the same time. Because of the lockdowns in the UK, the salon should have been finished much sooner, but because we've had to postpone things, and then we're trying to meet the deadline for the new lockdown. So the lockdown was meant to finish a couple of days later after World AIDS Day, which is the 1st of December. The UK government moved it back to the 2nd of December. Like, now you can all be free. So we had to have the salon ready for the 2nd, and I had to have the app ready, the new version of the app ready for the 1st. And I worked. I would get a meeting the builders at 8 a.m. and then I was working till like 3 a.m. with the developers. And it was just it was crazy. And last week I just hit the wall. But I gave myself a couple of days. I sort of hit the goals that I needed to, and now I'm all right. But yeah, it's I still barber as well. I don't just own the salon. I actually still barber part-time, and I run the app. So it's a bit crazy.
When you hit that wall, what did you do to recover? Because you say you took some time off. Is there certain things you do?
I've hit the wall a couple of times in my entrepreneurial journey. I think this sounds awful, but I think you get a bit more used to it, and you understand what you need, what it takes for you to recover. Obviously, the more that you go through, the better you become at recovering. I know, I don't focus on my health, being active when I'm under a deadline. I don't eat properly as well as what I normally would or should. I don't sleep enough, so just adding those 3 things, get some sleep, get some good food in you, and then try and exercise a little bit where you can. That kind of just kickstarts your body again. And then, you sort of, you're good to go, but rest is key. You just got to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like as soon as I hit a busy period, it's almost like my usual pattern and routine gets thrown out the window. And it's like all these things that I'm usually great at, just don't even focus on anymore. And I feel like that's when I lose it. It's when when everything gets too busy, then my usual routine gets thrown out the window. That's when I slam into that wall. So
slammed into the wall just then.
Yeah, I slammed into the wall.
What time we know that one?
Good thing we got good at editing skills.
I'll leave that in. That's too good. You should definitely do that.
I'm so passionate about everything. Yeah, as soon as when that stuff all gets thrown out the window, that's when I find the wall. And then my way of getting past it is actually refinding the routine. And then once I manage that, then I can start rolling again. I totally agree.
Yeah. One of the questions you brought actually is, is like, what's the biggest, and where's the question here? Hang on. What's the best piece of advice? I've got a ton of whiteboards. Like I bought 8 whiteboards, right? And actually writing everything down and getting it out of my head and putting it on, like writing it down, getting it onto paper or whatever. That massively helps the strain, like the mental strain, because if you've got so many things running around in your head, you're burning out. Your brain actually burns more calories than any other part of your body. If your body says that you need to consume X amount of calories a day, I think your brain burns about 16 to 1800 calories out of those total calories. which is a lot, right? So if you give it a bit of ease, you're not going to be needed as much.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah,
true. The writing I found particularly this year when I was sort of going through different challenges, just putting my words on paper was just this sort of like, it's just all this stress sort of oozing out of me, and I just feel so much better, and then I can read back on it, and yeah, putting on
the way I
paper.
look at it,
Right.
it's like you're taking things from being invisible and floating around your head to visible in front of you.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, if something's there, it's much easier to come up with a solution to that problem if you know what it is. But if you don't, it's you're kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah, for sure. I think worrying about something that isn't worth worrying about yet is like it's a killer, right?
Yeah, I'm a victim to that one.
If that adverse event hasn't occurred yet, like just don't really worry about it.
When you do that, what do you do to rein yourself in? Because when I start to, overthink about situations that haven't happened, and then I'm starting to feel a bit anxious, I tend to like slow down and do my breathing, and just, that's how I get through it. What do you do?
Literally exactly the same. I think it's easy to sort of like pick up the momentum and start falling down the hill into this anxious state. But just trying to, stand upright, sort of give yourself a minute, like just do your breathing and be like, right, is it worth worrying about? No, probably not. So, don't worry about it. if it happens, then right, okay, let's think about a plan to get around it, right? But if it never happens, don't waste any energy on it.
Yeah. Surprisingly hard to do though, letting that thing on the to-do list get pushed back a few days. It almost hurts the pride a little bit.
like anything, right? It takes work, it takes time. The more you work on it, the better you're going to become at it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you work with a lot of stakeholders. So with the barber shop, you have the people that work there, you work with people. And then with the app, you've mentioned developers, PR team. How do you navigate all these relationships?
Whenever I go into a meeting, if I'm meeting a new PR company, or if I'm meeting a marketing team, or if I'm meeting developers or anything, one of the first staple points that I will always say is that good relationships are built around communication. The more clear I am with you, the more you understand what I'm expecting from you, and the more clear you are with me. It's about managing expectations on both sides, being that clear from the outset. And then also an element of honesty, like if someone sees that you've got good intentions and that's why you're asking the question, like it's a different conversation opposed to them feeling like they're on the back foot and sort of fighting back against you. I use Trello, which is a great app that I have on my phone, and that's like digital whiteboards for me. And I've got sort of, one board for each sort of like the marketing team, what's to do, what ideas that we have, what they're working on at the minute, and what's being delivered on. That really structures things for me. And I think.
So it sounds like a lot of communication and organization.
Yeah, it does.
Making sure
it's like becoming friends with someone, right? It's at first like you figuring each other out, but as you sort of communicate more with each other, it becomes so much easier. It's almost like having to be quite rigid at first, but helping them understand why, and then it's so much easier further down the line.
Yeah, that clarity lets everyone kind of see the vision, and everyone can kind of work towards the same thing.
Working off the same page.
So look, among all your time that's split between the salons and work on developing the app, and also looking after yourself, how do you find time to keep on learning, in working on your craft and picking up new skills?
This is actually something that I do struggle with, and I do get a little bit disappointed with myself at times. So I try to read a chapter of a book every night. It doesn't always happen, and then I can be a little bit disappointed with myself. What I do is when I'm traveling, when I'm driving in the car or whatever, I'll have a podcast on, or I'll have an audio book on, and that's just time when I can. I always read or listen to something that's relevant to me at the time. I don't just read a book for the sake of it. So if I know that I'm, you know, I read a book recently by Nia Eyal called Hooked. He's a guy from Silicon Valley, and he's worked for a lot of like tech startups who develop apps. And it's about how they've created platforms that people become hooked to. And I thought, well, you know, I'm building an app that's relevant, right? At the beginning of the year, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad about sort of cash and financing, because I was raising money at the time and understanding how money works for me. I don't work for the money, you know. So I read things like that, whatever's relevant to me at the time. But yeah, having the time to do it is tough. It really is. And you've got to be strict with yourself, I think is the main point.
I really like that concept. Yeah. Like keep it relevant, you know, like, you know, we all drive, we all have a commute to work. It's such an easy time to get little bits of stimulus kind of floating around your brain to get your, you know, get the juices flowing for whatever kind of comes in that day.
Exactly. Yeah. And it doesn't, like, you've got your notes and you just like, because it's already on your brain, whatever you're dealing with at the time. If you're reading something that you can absorb it so much more, you're learning so much more from it. And you can, like, you know, then you get to your meeting, whatever you're driving to, you're like, pow, I've got this, you know, this is what I've just learned like 10 minutes ago, but this is so good, you know?
And there's always one thing, you know, there's always one thing. It's like, man, how do I come across that one piece of information perfectly today?
Yeah, I'm like working from home, so I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and like Sam just gets these random like voice memos like every few days, like, hey man, I just like saw this thing, I think we should try it. And yeah, it's essentially just using that time you already have. You're traveling, you're working, right? And then just putting in some earphones and just expanding your knowledge.
You're on the treadmill in the gym, right? Yeah, whether you're out for a walk, you know, sometimes if I've not had time to exercise or I'm not out in the car, I'll just go for a walk for an hour. I just put it in my ears and just walk. That's it. And I'm getting my steps in, and you know, and I'm also like, I'm learning as well, right? So yeah, that's the way I try and squeeze it in, you know, because I don't have much time.
So look, in terms of your employees that would form this little network that helps, you know, build your team, how would you inspire them to be the best version of themselves?
By being clear. Again, like I said, it's about communication. One thing that I actually do, which some people sort of pull a bit of a funny face to, but one thing I do with staff or people that I work with, I'm like, write down exactly what you think your job role is, what you think your job entails. And they write that down. And I find that that's a great starting point, because we can either add to it or we can say, actually, that's not your job. And that's, you know, they appreciate that. And anything that maybe that I believe should be a part of their job that they're uncomfortable with, we both know then that it's something to work on. And that's empowering for them, because they know they're learning a new skill. It's empowering for me to see somebody learn a new skill and feel good about themselves. And again, you're working off the same page. It's that communication, and that makes such a big difference. Such a big difference. You know, how many times have you been handed a job spec, but like, that's your job, and then you've been doing a job and you're like, actually, is this my job? Is this right? That's just like the corporate industry, right? Like, I'm just like, so yeah, I'm being clear.
So resistance to change is a big thing in the business world. And I know Sam and I, like, we designed this first logo, and this was our little baby. And, you know, we were like, all right, maybe we'll get someone to, you know, design like a professional looking logo. And then just getting that stage of putting our baby to this person and then them designing it. And we were just like, oh, we don't know. And with the app, I'd imagine there's been a few different versions, and, you know, you might get stuck on one, but really changing to the next one is probably the best thing. How do you deal with resistance to change?
So just to give you an idea, I literally drew my Positive Plus One logo, what I envisioned, on the back of like a fag packet, you know, on like a napkin. And they were like, this is it. You have to understand that, you know, and especially I have to say this to everybody, but you have to bring in experts within their fields. if you hire a designer, you know, make sure you do your due diligence and they actually are an expert in their field. But if you bring somebody on, you know, the best thing you can do is just let you know, roll with it, let them do it, deliver on it, you know, work, bounce it back and forth, and then take it to market. You'll find out like that, you know, take it to market, put it on your Instagram, put it on your social media. What do you think? Get your community to give you the answers. It's that simple. And that is real time, instant feedback. Don't be like and ahhing about something for months on end. Just put it out there. Done.
Yeah, we got caught up on the personal attachment to, we made this, you know, this is us. And looking back, it was shit. So shit.
Microsoft.
And then all of a sudden we have this amazingly professional one, which we use now, which is probably going to stick with us forever. And yeah, it was like, even like at the time we were like, man, we don't know, like, you know, what's it like? Since we cast the other one aside and had the new one, we were like, I can't believe we were that blinded by our own personal attachment to this thing. That
don't be surprised if your brand grows as you grow. Imagine your brand is like a human life cycle. Your logo is a human life cycle. The language that you use as you know, as part of your brand, like it starts out as like an infant, a toddler, then you'll grow, you'll become like a, you know, young teen, then a young adult, you know, and like your brand grows as you do. My first salon were like super edgy, like, you know, loud music, like, you know, like the dim lighting, like a nightclub kind of thing, you know. But now, like, as I've grown, it's a bit more of a mature environment. It caters to maybe like a bit slightly older demographic, you know, like it will grow with as you grow. You know, your logo, like you said, you think you stick with that forever because you think it's perfect right now. We've just fully rebranded Positive Plus One, and I never thought that would happen, but it just did. And I just rolled with it. And I'm like, actually now in hindsight, I'm like, this is so much better.
Yeah. It's hindsight, hey? It's always
hindsight.
hindsight.
It's a heck of a thing.
Perfect decisions only happen in hindsight. That's
I like that. Perfect decisions only happen in hindsight.
So let's say, you know, me and Leroy, we were young people trying to start our own little business or, you know, startup essentially. What would be your best tip to us? We've just got into the game. We don't really know what we're going to look for either. What direction would you send us down?
I mean, if you don't necessarily, that's the trickiest part, I think, finding what it is that you want to do, right? You know, a lot of people tend to say, find a problem. But that's got to be relevant to you. Don't just be like looking around the world and be like, there's a problem with this, you know, like it's got to be something that you're going to be passionate about, because motivation comes and goes, but passion remains, right? I think once you have that sort of an idea, or you've got something that you think interests you, it has to interest you. Do your research, test it, do your research again, test it, you know, feedback, it's just constant feedback. And I think probably most importantly of all, and I see this a lot, I get a lot of people messaging me, asking me for advice about businesses and ideas that they've had. We all have to understand that we're learning as we're going through this journey. And you have to be patient with yourself, and you have to empathize with yourself. You can't expect to know everything. You don't know what you don't know. It's you know, it's that simple. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to fuck up. Empathize. Be patient. Do your research. Take what you've learned. Go again.
And it's that thing of being ready to bounce back, because shit's going to go wrong. You know, and
you will fail
really go right.
9 times out of 10, but the 10th time is the time that it works.
Yeah. And yeah, you'll pick up new things from every time you stuff up too, to help bulletproof that next idea.
You know, I think as we grow as people, like, you know, we could become a better version of ourselves every time we fail, because we know what not to do. That's the most important thing. Whenever I've started a business, you know, I've taken experiences from past working environments, and rather than focus on like, wow, this is what I should do and blah, 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 I'm like, what shouldn't I do? And let's use that as a foundation. Let's build from there.
Yeah.
You know, I
like that. I was actually listening to something the other day, and he was saying, like, at the beginning of the year, people always write what they want to achieve that year. but instead you can flip it around and write what you wanted to stop that year.
I think Sarah Blakely, who created Spanx, I saw her do a talk at Tony Robbins, and she said that she asks her kids, what did they fail at that week? And I think that's so powerful because it normalizes failure opposed to it being like punishable. You know, like it normalizes, what did you fail at this week? Oh, I didn't, sports day, I didn't win. Right, okay, that's fine. What could you do to maybe win next time? Normalize failure. What did you fail at? Ask yourself that.
I really like that because sometimes especially when you're feeling good, when it's been your week, everything feels like it's going your way. You can neglect the things that you might didn't do very well. It's another, even though you're going great, it's a missed opportunity to have learned from something. And I reckon that every week there's always something that you could have done better.
Yeah, 100%.
Look, Christian, thanks so much for coming and talking to us this morning or evening for you over there. Whereabouts can people find you in terms of looking for the app?
www.positiveplusone.com. That's all worded, no numbers. And find me on Instagram at Christian Philip Mercer. Philip is with one L. Anyone who wants to reach out, send me a message. I'd be more than happy to help anybody I can.
Because it's you're growing this network of other people helping other people, and it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing to get to have an inside opinion on.
Mm-hmm. I've got a podcast launching soon myself called Meet the Mentors, where I'm going to be interviewing my mentors, the people who've helped me along the way, and also sharing my stories and my journey. And mentoring people through my stories. So that's coming soon. Keep your eyes peeled for that.
We'll keep our eyes for that.
Yeah, sounds great. I can't wait to tune
I get you guys on, right?
And
there's two Australian guys that we chatted about hairdressing and apps for a while.
Of course, it's interesting to share your story too, for sure.
Thanks so much. We'll be sure to catch up with you sometime in the future, and I can't wait to see where this app takes the rest of that community.
Let's do end of February.
End of February.
UK.
I like
That'd be a good time.
And we should hopefully all be out of lockdown.
Yeah, for sure. Wicked. All right. Cheers, chaps.
All right.
At all.
See you later.